All right. Music is upon us. Right, let me take a sip.
Are you deliberately trying to test our patience? Inquiring mind wants to know.
All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we wrap up a retrospective on the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, a triptych of supernatural horror films from Japanese director Michio Yamamoto, with tonight's movie, The Evil of Dracula. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, editor of this summer's Castle of Horror Anthology. If you've ever wanted to read something that is from the very minds that have created this show that you've been listening to, this is your chance. This summer, the Castle of Horror Anthology is upon us. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, the one and only tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man and winner of the 2018 Best of Austin Award from the Austin Chronicle. Say hello, Mr. Drew Edwards.
Hello, Mr. Drew Edwards.
Hello. It's so good to have you guys back.
I'm nodding approvingly.
Yes.
Also in Denver, that voice, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
One day there's going to be a master cut.
It's pronounced different every single time.
I know. Yes. One day there's going to be a master cut of this, and I'm looking forward to that day.
Okay. All right. Evil of Dracula is a 1974 Japanese horror film directed by Michio Yamamoto. He is the same guy who directed the previous two films, Vampire Doll and Lake of Dracula. He had actually quit making these movies and had gone off to do television and was lured back to do a third of these films that they ran from 71 to 74. This one, Evil of Dracula, is about a man who takes a job as a professor at a girls' school only to realize the school is run by a pair of ancient vampires. Okay. Let's get opening thoughts. Tony, I know that you are the biggest fan of Japanese films in general and certainly Japanese horror. Let's go Tony, Drew, Julia, and then I'll go. Tony, Evil of Dracula, lay it on us.
Oh, I dig this. I, again, hadn't, this used to be hard to find, and now we can watch them on Blu-ray or on Amazon Prime, which is amazing. The prints look great on Prime as well. I was super stoked at what I got with this movie. The closest to Bram Stoker's Dracula that we get in these films. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of callbacks. It's interesting to see, or possibly Bram Stoker's Dracula by way of original Universal Dracula in the way that the opening's put together. I like it. Also is the most Hammer of all of them, with there's a lot more nudity, a lot more gossamer dresses, a lot more just bright colors mixed in with all of that. Vampires in basements, all of that stuff that you kind of expect from a Hammer movie. I think, and I wonder what you guys think as well, I see shades of what I saw in Palance's Dracula as well. This Dracula just rips.
Yes.
When he wants to charge around being a vampire, not maybe quite as just, I'm going to tear things apart as Palance, but I think the closest we've seen in a while. I don't know if you guys agree, but yeah,
I haven't watched Palance in a decade, so I totally need to go back and watch it.
I mean, we did it on the show.
We haven't done it.
No, we haven't.
Really, we didn't. What? No. This is another one of those where I slipped into an alternate dimension, and you and
I actually were on a panel. We were on a panel years ago where we talked about it at length. But that was in real life.
We got to fix this.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, put a pin in that one. In 3 or 4 weeks or so, we should totally do that.
I agree. It's a great idea.
But yeah, I think he feels a lot closer to that version of Dracula as well.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Drew, I assume it's your first time watching Evil of Dracula. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen this movie. I had only seen one of these previously, as discussed, Lake of Dracula. I think I liked this one the best out of the three. It's certainly not as arty or art housey as Vampire Doll, but it's got the best overall narrative strength to it. Like it's got a story and characters that I felt a lot more invested in it. It doesn't have sort of the meandering feel that the other two has. And at the same time, I feel a little weird saying this, although Tony kind of already put it out. Pointed this out. It is the most westernized of the three. Like it really does, you see a lot of, Hammer, you see a lot of Universal, and even the Stoker novel. The version of, quote unquote Dracula is interesting to me. He's kind of an Austin Powers Dracula in my book. Like he's very
Totally.
of his time, with his mod hairdo and long Doctor Who scarf. But the movie is very sexist. I think, I don't know how much time we'll spend actually discussing that, but there is a lot of sort of sexism that feels very much of this particular time and place.
Yeah.
So modern viewers beware. Know that going into this movie spends an exuberant amount of time with men in their 30s, kind of remarking on the attractiveness of young girls who they're supposed to be teaching. So wouldn't
like you do.
Wouldn't probably fly today. I wonder why.
I hope that it wouldn't have flown in 74, but I really have no idea.
I obviously this movie got all the way through there.
Yeah.
So like that would really be my only caveat about the whole thing. Like that stuff always kind of made me cringe a little bit, but overall, overall very enjoyable old school style vampire movie with some really awesome 70s era gore effects.
Yeah. Excellent. Julia, did you have any thoughts here?
Well, yeah, I think, Drew kind of has me thinking about this. So yes, I absolutely think that the Austin Powers analogy is a good one, because he is very goofily 70s, which obviously Austin Powers is more goofily 60s, but he's very goofily 70s in some ways. But he has coolness, but he also has goofiness at kind of at different times. Yes, the school is an all-girls school with all male professors, and all the girls are happy to flirt with the professors and hopefully hook up with them, maybe marry them. It seems to be like you go to that school to get an MRS degree by dating the professors.
Yes.
And there's some gratuitous nipple shots and stuff like that. But so I think that for sure it's going to be not the most PC film that we've watched, but there's some interesting things about it. I really was fascinated by, and I'm sure that it's partly just my limited, having not seen that many movies like this, but fascinated by the idea that the vampires would wear other people's faces to stay young. I thought that was really interesting, and like I say, I don't know if that's something that happens in other films other than Face Off, which is not about staying young, but just about stealing identity. But that was a very interesting, disturbing thought. There was some really disturbing things in this film. I'm trying to think if I want to say anything else right now. I think that's it for now.
So thank you very much. I would totally agree. This, first of all, out of all three of this triptych of films are very different from one another. Vampire Doll is a piece of folklore, and it's a beautiful, weird, very, very super Asian ghost story. The second one plays like a mystery and a sort of a thriller stalker kind of movie. And this one is a straight up Hammer style vampire film. And except for that light count Yorga it takes place in contemporary times, and so you've got but also like Count Yorga. Remember how what was awesome about Count Yorga was that he's like this, he's this suave European style, 19th century style vampire. He just happens to live in the 1960s, and he's not going to bother changing his outfits just for
Exactly.
you. It's the
Yeah,
same thing.
definitely in that Palance style. I didn't at first think of Count Yorga, but yeah, in that same kind of like, hey, I'm gonna be cool, but when it's time to rip, it's time to be a vampire badass, and I'm just gonna rip shit up.
This is, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, this is the vampire from the last movie. This is like this is the first one. Since we've watched 3 of these, I saw a lot of the same sets, doors, facades, actors. That's the other thing that's very similar to Hammer, is that we're seeing a lot of the same character actors and everything show up, and including the main vampire, who was the main vampire in the last film as well. So cool stuff. So let's get started. The movie begins with this professor, and he takes I'm actually blanking on his name right now, but the professor takes a job as a philosophy professor in a girls' school. This is a plot that we've actually seen before in Lust for a Vampire. That's the only Hammer film I could think of that actually shared that plot. And if you call in that one, that was actually even more sexist than this one, because at least in this one, the guy is really a philosophy professor.
He's called Professor Shiraki, by the way.
Shiraki, very good.
Yeah.
Whereas in Lust for a Vampire, the guy starts drinking with a guy who says, "Oh, I'm going to the girls' school to be a professor," and so what Lestrange does is he manages to trick the guy who was supposed to go into not going, so he can take his place, because he thinks that being a professor in an all-girls school sounds pretty rad. That's more sexist than this, where at least in this one he intends to go be a teacher. But absolutely, yes, there is, if there is any impropriety to dating students in the universe of this film, none of these characters seem aware of it, because it is literally there's no idea whatsoever that there's anything uncool about letting these girls flirt with you. Anyway, he gets there. He immediately meets up with the principal. The principal immediately says, you saw the car wreck on the way in, this car burning by the side of the road. My wife died recently in this car accident. I'm going to leave, and I think you should be the principal. And that's
also
Yeah.
that he has her body in the
Yeah.
basement.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's interred in the basement, and this is when very, very quickly the movie reveals itself as, are the vampires real or are they not real? They're real. They're totally, totally real, because there's this hilarious scene where he goes down to the crypt to inspect the coffin, and when the principal comes and interrupts, like, "What are you doing?" He turns around, and then we see, although Professor Shiraki does not see, the wife who's lying in state, her arms just start reaching up.
It's really cool and creepy.
Oh yeah, really awesome. But also, like, I know that it's kind of supposed to mirror Jonathan Harker coming, because he gets picked up by the car, which is supposed to be the coach.
Totally right. Yeah.
He's locked in. He's kind of in this place where he's out of place.
And he dreams, doesn't he dream that he's attacked by a beautiful vampire lady?
Right.
Yeah.
Before all that. But even then, man, who goes down to their boss's makeshift crypt and goes,
Yes.
"Man, yeah, I kind of want to see a body.
Right.
I want to see I want to see what his wife looks like after this car wreck."
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
it's not just that it's not even an open casket. There's like there's covering over it. He's like
Right.
slowly
I'm surprised he
removing,
doesn't break the thing. He just like moves the slab off of it and just like puts it on the floor. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's gonna totally break.
and then he's surprised when at this moment, he doesn't know he's a vampire. It's his boss.
Right.
Mhm.
Comes in and goes, "What the hell are you doing, man?"
I
And
can't believe he doesn't get fired like 10 times in this
I
film.
just wanted to see the body. Like, I mean, that's your wife, though, right? Didn't you cover it and make it inaccessible in a basement for people to come down here and undo all of that and go see her? You did that, right? Like, what a jerk! Like,
No, he
I mean,
totally needed to be fired so many times.
Let's talk about
Yeah.
these vampires, though. Because this is a good opportunity to discuss. Because rather than working our way straight through the plot, I want to understand these vampires, because I believe the reason they don't fire him. Okay, is this the vampire plot? And I apologize if I've got it wrong, but it seems as though the whole vampire plot is this guy's going to become principal, but our Japanese Dracula, which is what they called him in the papers, is really planning on taking his face and replacing him. And so, in other words, he will always be the principal. He's just going to keep sort of bringing in fresh faces,
Perhaps.
essentially.
Or just a school full of vampires. I think at some point it seems like there's an either or. I think you're closest to it, but I think, hey,
you're right. Eventually they're going to infest the entire school. This school, by the way, it is really neat because it has it's big, right? It's got a lot of buildings. The principal lives in a mansion, but there's also the school mansion itself, and then there's all the tennis courts and a lake, and it's in the middle of freaking nowhere. So I don't know what people send their teenage daughters to, this boarding school in the middle of nowhere, with a bunch of 20-something professors.
Oh, I'm sure the idea was, we need to send you to an all-girls school because you're too slutty and you keep trying to sleep with everybody. Not knowing what was going to happen when they went to this all-girls school.
Man. Well, the other thing that Lust for a Vampire offers that this film doesn't is, at least in Lust for a Vampire, you have Jenny Playfair, which is a hilarious name, who is there just to roll her eyes at the absurdity of these other men. She's a professor, and she's there to be annoyed at all the idiots. You could really use that character here. Just one woman who is teaching and just is kind of vaguely appalled at everything. That if I were rewriting it, that's the one person that I would add. The professor who wears the fishing jacket all the time, I would really like to see that character be a girl, because I think it'd be a cool POV. I love how the vampires, when they come after him in this early stage, the female vampire comes after him. She kind of zooms toward him like she's flying.
Like
she's
on tracks or
it's a neat effect. I know it's a low tech effect, but it's great. I mean, it's a super solid effect. Because she just goes, whoosh, and there she is, right up to the camera.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, no, it was very scary, and that's also one of those things. It's that certainly you mentioned Palance, Tony, but also I think House of Dark Shadows has the vampires zooming up the staircases and stuff like that, and certainly Yorga. So this is kind of a thing in the 70s that the vampires start stepping it up a little bit, as far as when they're coming after you, they are really coming after you. The principal in this one, we'll talk about it when we get to it, but the fight that he has with the principal is 20 minutes long.
Well, again, like I said last time, the fights are so much more real in these movies than they are in Hollywood. Except for the one thing is that the strangling is so fake. Whenever they pretend to strangle the other person, you can see daylight in between their fingers and the person's throat. So I guess that they don't want to be too authentic about. But the fighting seems pretty authentic.
Yeah, they do really well with all of that. So Drew, I really do want to talk about, you brought up, we've been talking about just the inappropriateness of professors flirting with students, and our hero, the professor, basically starts investigating this mystery and just kind of develops one of the students as a girlfriend of his. But setting that aside, you talked about just plumb sexism. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like if you're a young person approaching this film and you're kind of not used to the sexism of older films, what is it you're going to be seeing that will blow your mind?
Well, I mean, the thing that this scene that really made me kind of, even me who watches quite a few older movies, made my jaw drop, is there's a part where they're talking about there's three female students complaining about the chauffeur character and how he's creepy, and he follows them around and he watches them from afar.
Right.
And they complain about this to the professor, who is nominally our hero, and his reaction is like, oh, he probably can't help himself because the three of you are all so pretty.
Yeah.
And he's
Right.
just kind of, it's like he's coming on to them on one level, but he's also being dismissive that the school chauffeur is a peeping Tom.
Yeah, he's a peeping Tom. He is.
And this is referenced again later when he's actually like looking through their window.
Yes. And they're down with it. Or not down with it, but they take it in stride. In other words, like basically that
it just means we're pretty.
That men are going to invade your personal space and your privacy and all that stuff as much as they can get away with, basically.
Well, they don't have any other choice.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they're all going to band together against this, but they don't have anybody saying, no, that's against the rules. There's no women teachers saying you guys need to behave yourselves. Nothing. And so they just kind of go, well, I guess that's how it is.
There's the moment in the previous movie, it was in Lake of Dracula, where she actually uses the term rape. She says the groundskeeper guy tried to rape me, and her sister goes, oh, well, who can blame him? He's always watching you. Or
she doesn't say
you
can blame him. She's just like, basically, are you surprised, kind of, or like,
right. It's like that's not surprising to me. Yeah, that's no surprise.
So,
he's always watching you, but it's not like we need to get rid of that guy or call the police or anything. It's just shocking.
The thing is here, and why I think this would be problematic to anybody watching this now, is because it reinforces two ideas. One, that men are just these slavering beasts who are slaves to their sex drive, and they just can't help themselves. They're not capable of making ethical choices because like your eyeballs are going to be ruled by your hormones.
Yeah.
And then there's also like, well, the idea that like if a man is behaving that way to you, that it's a compliment. And like as Julia said, that you should just sort of take it, which is, again, I this movie came out 4 years before I was born.
Yeah.
I don't have no idea this point in the 1970s were, but like certainly, now, and yet because of what you just said, because he does create this bond with this one student, the plot kind of hinges on you putting your politically correct goggles aside and go, okay, that's a function, whether you like it or not, that's a function of this movie.
Yeah.
And
not that it justifies anything.
No.
But you're looking, I mean, you gotta remember, you're looking at several different lenses happening at once, right? A cultural lens, a movie from Japan from the 70s in this genre, written, directed by men.
Boy, that's a big one.
And also, I mean, if this movie is problematic, I mean, I'm constantly just look at like a lot of samurai movies, especially from the 70s. I mean, if those samurai movies were true, every woman was just fodder for some kind of sexual violence.
Yes.
I hope that wasn't feudal Japan. I haven't researched it.
I don't know. I honestly think that that I mean, I wasn't alive in feudal Japan, but I honestly believe that probably it was a lot like that. I mean, look at the casting couches in the last, 4 decades. It's not. There's not. It's not that far. Like Drew was saying, men are seen as these people who can't control themselves and whatever. But the fact is, some men are that way. Not all men, but some men are like that. And so women have had to deal with it. And if society doesn't say, "Oh, you're not supposed to be that way," and we're going to shame you for being that way, then those men are going to feel emboldened. Just like now, we have a lot of people who used to behave differently are emboldened to behave as they feel like they were really want to behave, even though the rest of us find it appalling, because certain people have said, yeah, that's fine. So I think that's how it was back then. It's like, it was fine for, well, heck, I mean, just until the Me Too movement, it was fine for, men to ogle women walking down the street, and women would be like, oh, fuck off, whatever, to the guys, but it was still not. And now suddenly it's more frowned upon as societally, and not just by the individual woman that's walking down the street.
There's I was thinking about the transition that this is a reach back as well, but like 9 to 5. The movie 9 to 5. I was thinking about the transition that Dolly Parton's character goes through, where she starts out, Mr. Hart says something like, "I'm sorry I act the way I do, Dora Lee. I just can't help myself with how beautiful you are." And she goes, "Oh, that's fine. I just have to, next time you invite me on a conference, I just need to make sure there's actually a conference going on," or whatever. In other words, she has irony and also but because of the power imbalance, she's just basically, there's an extra job that I have, which is putting up with your shit.
Not just the power imbalance, although that's a huge part of it, but also the fact that if you're in a relationship with someone, it doesn't even have to be a power. You can decide, because I'm getting some value out of the relationship, even though I know this person is just like this way. So this can be with spouses, it can be with anybody, where they go, well, that's just how that person is, so I'm just gonna, it's on me. It's like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, because I know that you behave this way. So I know I should have looked up the conference. I should have brought my husband. I should have whatever the thing is. Because
you're a cookie monster. I should have known you were who you are.
Right, exactly.
But by the end of that film, she's come around to the notion that they're not going to put up with Mr. Hart anymore. And that's sort of, that film lives at that sort of fulcrum. This is before that fulcrum, and it's in Japan. So
I mean, that's the thing. It's not that that you should look at it fresh and go, whoa, that's creepy, or that's definitely of a time, but just that's exactly what we're seeing.
And actually,
and just be aware of it, right? Go ahead, Julia. What were you gonna say?
Well, actually, these professors aren't even that bad, aside from the fact that one's a vampire. The chauffeur obviously is horrible.
Yes.
But the chauffeur is obviously horrible, but the other guys, the girls flirt with them, and they have these relationships that we would now consider to be inappropriate. But the fact is, I have a friend. I mean, what is this supposed to be, high school or college?
This is college.
Yeah, I have a friend who slept. I have a friend who slept with her professor in college. That's not unheard of. So the fact is, I don't think that they're the worst offenders in the world as far as being, abusing their power or being lechers.
And this movie isn't it's far from even the sleaziest movie we've ever reviewed on this show. But it was on my mind.
No, I think it's worth discussing. And by the way, I also think, and I'll go way out on a limb, I think that men and women both can also enjoy a movie as fantasy, and also say, but in real life, I would totally not approve of this. I think that's a completely appropriate thing to go, yes, I like watching Merchant Ivory movies, because I imagine putting myself into the place of men or women in that time and under those constraints, but I'm not saying that I want to return to those constraints.
If you want to spend a couple extra hours on this podcast, we could get into that whole thing. Because that's you just opened up a huge can of worms with that. Because that's the thing. It's like, do we want, what is our responsibility in media and in fiction?
I mean, I think that
how much do we want to say? Yeah, how much do we want to say, here's fantasies, regardless of how PC they are, versus saying, okay, we're not going to put anything on screen that we don't think people should, without shaming it in the screen, that we don't think people should turn against. So in other words, if you're going to say 50 Shades of Grey, he's treating her this way, but she's going to come around and she's going to have an epiphany about how she shouldn't be treated this way and turn away from him. Oh, wait, no, she's not going to do that. she's gonna just go
Right.
stay with the guy and like eventually marry him and whatever else. That is like, I feel like I don't know the answer, but I feel like there is a little bit of irresponsibility when we put that on the screen or in the book, and we don't say that's not okay though in real life.
Although I really do, I think you're onto something though. I think
Okay.
a side podcast of that, and as
Yeah.
a guy, I don't maybe have a lot to add, but I think it would be a good like
Well, we have to get
get
Jamie
all
on
of the
that one.
women who have been on
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's an excellent, especially in horror.
Yeah.
There's so much that's fantasy and, not being gatekeeper jerks. Like, there's a lot of women who grew up who love horror movies.
Yeah.
Luckily, in Austin, we have a great community. I know tons of cool women who are kicking ass in all kinds of media. I think, that is, I think, a really excellent podcast.
It's a
idea.
I
That'd be a
really
cool
would like to
idea.
listen. I'd like to listen to it more than I'd like to be on it. I would actually.
Yeah.
I'd actually like to
like-
hear a
Funny.
panel of women do that conversation, and I don't want to be part of it. I want to listen to what you have to say.
I mean, what are we gonna do? Well, actually,
I think right. What am I going to say? I think
come on.
women. What? Finish that.
Let me
sentence,
tell
please.
you.
By all means.
No, that's not.
No, but there is a role. There is a role for men, and it's not just. It is to listen, but it's to actively listen. So it's to say. So when
Right.
I do this, or when my friend does this, or when this happened in this situation that I was in, how would that make you feel if you were in that? I think that there's a role for that of just going. Let's really explore because you have to have inquiry about your own behavior and your own experience with the other person. So it can't just be a bunch of women going, this is how I feel when it's without men engaging in that conversation and saying, well, here's what we're thinking when that happens. We didn't realize that we were making you feel like we're predators and that,
Right.
like this is what we thought. Cause I think that's valuable too. It's not, it shouldn't just be about women beating up on men.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, there was an excellent post about what has been termed was it now I can't remember the term, but because I'm drawing a blank. But basically, you post all the time on Twitter, reply guys.
Oh yes.
And
yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
And I found myself going, have I accidentally become reply guy?
Am I one of these guys?
Just because like I dig cool authors and cool people doing cool stuff. I'm lucky enough that there's a lot of awesome women who I know who are doing neat stuff, and through Twitter you can just see tons of people being rad.
Wait, Julia, do you remember I told you about this?
Yes, and I have a comment on this, but I wanted Tony to finish his point.
But it did make me think like, hey, when I'm like, because it's so hard to take tone into account in text, like it did make me like really think I would definitely do it on purpose, be a reply guy.
But okay, so let me
interact. I think
let me
is
give a little
interesting, and that made me think.
Let me give a little perspective on this. So I believe what you're talking about, because I don't remember specifically, but I believe what you're talking about is women posting things and guys coming on and going, yeah, that's really smart point, or that's really great, whatever, right? Is that what you're talking about? Kind of that whole thing?
Well, that's part. There's a spectrum in the article, and
But I mean, that's what I understood it to be, and so. I personally, and maybe it's because I'm an older generation, because I'm now an older generation, a woman of a certain age. I personally cannot imagine being bothered by that. Like I guess it depends on what the statement is. If the statement is, wow, for a woman you're not bad, that would be one thing. But if the statement is, that's an awesome point. I don't care what gender you are if you're telling me that, or I think that's a really great, or congratulations, or good for you for doing that. I don't. If I wouldn't mind a woman saying it to me, I wouldn't mind a guy saying it to me. That's me. I cannot speak for this group of women who doesn't feel that way. They may feel like I don't need your approval, and that could be for all everybody actually. But then my thought is, why bother posting it if you don't want people to say something, or why bother posting it in a venue where there's comments?
Oh, I see, but but I also I think so, but like I said, it did make me think about, and I think that's the big thing is the difference. Maybe that's the difference, is being self-aware enough to go, ooh, have I, like, even accidentally, even like unintentionally,
But the thing is,
things, and I think
now we're
that's the
creating
difference.
a culture where and that might be okay. It's like Jason always says that he doesn't care if men, if college guys are afraid to be considered rapists when they push a girl who's drunk to have sex with them. He's like, I don't care if you're afraid. That's good. Good, be afraid. That's fine. But I don't think that I want to create a culture where people are afraid to engage with each other. And I kind of think that's where we are right now. And I don't think we're always going to be there. I think it's that we're trying to figure out the balance. We're trying to figure out what is respectful, what is whatever. And so, so at the moment, if I were a guy, I would feel really afraid to talk to any woman ever. And that's not how it should be. You know, you shouldn't have to feel that way. But that's just, I don't know.
Well, coming from me, I kind of agree with Jason. It's weird, again, being the dude. We've gone far afield of the actual movie.
That's fine.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I feel like, and maybe it's just because I've always kind of been shy. I definitely never had game or anything remotely about being cool. In those regards, is I think if the alternative, there are so many alternatives that I don't. And people use that as an excuse, like, well, in this culture, I'm just too scared to do whatever. But I've seen it be the opposite, where people use that as a crutch for their own bad behavior.
True.
Like, well, if that's the way, then how do I even know? And it spawns this whole other kind of toxicity.
The toxic anger.
I mean,
kind of
we're
thing,
still I don't know, we're still figuring a lot of this stuff out.
Yeah.
And again, what can I say? I know how I felt when I was younger. I didn't also have the internet. I am happily married, like, and my wife is cool. We do music together, like all this stuff. So coming from me, I'm not in that same position. So what the hell do I know? But I think some of that, it's a little dangerous to think the opposite way of, like, because so many people I've seen so many people try to use that as the crutch as well. But
right, yeah. Well, and I think bad people are going to use whatever excuse they can be to be bad people, whatever excuse they have. So,
like a Dracula, like being a Dracula.
Yes. So coming back around to this, the question then becomes, like, if you were to make this movie PC, like, how would you change it, and would that be a good thing? I don't know the answer to that, but I just
don't think this movie would be made now the same way.
Yeah, there's a lot of films that just, I forgot what I was watching recently that I was like, holy cow, this
you could do it
film, but like,
it would be, the relationships would be different.
The girl would just simply become another professor. It's easy. It's a snap of the finger. She's another professor. She's a librarian. She's a dean. She's a whatever.
Dude, it's too soon to say snap of the finger after Endgame. Don't say that.
But what? So
R.I.P.
what does happen, though, that's interesting is the girls in the dormitory start vamping each other.
Yeah.
Even more than the there's the flirty, like, oh, hey, professor, you're cute. And we get
and then you get into the lesbian fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah, we get the police don't stand so close to me.
There is the one chick who steals the other chick's face. I forget whatever his name is.
Right.
First bites her on the breast, and you see that's one of
that's true.
Scenes.
But what I mean is, considering how many nipples there are in this movie, this is a very chaste film, really. Like, there's no, like, this is not Lust for a Vampire. Like, no, there's no like the British fantasy in those movies, that what happens when you put a bunch of teenage girls in a boarding school together is they start making out. That is not in evidence in this film at all. Which, it's the same time. It's like literally a contemporary film to those movies, and it's not here at all. And it's not like the Japanese have not heard of lesbian horror. It's just that for some reason it's not here.
Well, there's a whole genre. I've been watching a bunch on Criterion on Amazon, actually. Pinky violence films, where, I mean, there's one in particular, Stray Cat Blues. Let's see, Delinquent Girl Boss, I think is the name of it. There's all these Stray Cat Blues movies.
All of these are like the most awesome T-shirts I've ever heard of. Delinquent Girl Boss.
So, Stray Cat Blues, Delinquent Girl Boss starts with, like, tough as nails biker. There's like women biker gangs just attacking each other with knives. None of this is advocating. This is just, holy crap, this is a crazy movie. But one girl gets a blowtorch like attack from another woman.
Golly.
And then her biker buddies come in. So there's all of these movies. That's 60s. That's before, late 60s maybe. So it's not too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right in the way that this, compared to that, this is even chase. But this has definitely the Hammer nudity aesthetic.
Yeah.
As opposed to a lot of the Italian or French vampire movies.
Right. Yeah, it definitely looks like Hammer, and yeah, it maybe it's chased like a mid '60s Hammer, really, except for with slightly more nudity. But boy, does it look like a Hammer film. And the plot, like Drew was saying about the way the plot just drives forward and keeps moving. That is super Western. I mean, remember how dreamy Vampire Doll was, how it just kind of meandered from like the bits of the story, and that's not in evidence here at all. This is a very fast moving, tight script. Since we're not really going over the plot, I just want to, or we're jumping around in the plot, I wanted to call out another really excellent thing, which is the moment later on when they're out by the lake is super scary. There's this moment where we're calling in the chauffeur.
When they tell you that all the bodies are at the bottom of it.
Yes, we don't even see the bodies at the bottom. We just know that they've been killing. They say we've been killing people for a long time, and there's bodies at the bottom of this lake. And the chauffeur, when he disappears into the lake, he just puts up his arms and he just goes straight down. It's wonderful. It's just really fantastic. Somehow water imagery always works for me, because there's that great moment in Carnival of Souls where the girl emerges out of the water. Actually, a lot of the Carnival folks emerge out of the water like that.
Shockwave.
Which film? I'm sorry?
Shockwave movie.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Shockwaves, yeah. Tony and I saw Shockwaves at Something Weird. Long time.
Weird Wednesday at Colorado Draft House.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Man, that's a good audience film.
Oh,
you ever get a chance to see Shockwaves with a good film audience, it's hella fun.
Absolutely. So okay. We've been jumping around a lot.
Why was the chauffeur not played by the guy that played the Renfield / Igor role in the previous movie?
In the previous two movies. The previous two.
Yeah.
I
think they needed somebody a little bit more suave. Even though he's a weird peeping Tom. But he's not monstrous.
He quotes poetry, yeah. He's just kind of smarmy, and they're not into him because he's too greasy, really. But he's not but he's still slick enough to quote poetry, which you don't picture with the gardener from the previous film.
And you do get the impression it would make more sense for the gardener guy to be the more Renfield.
Yeah.
But you do get the idea that this guy also, in the Renfield way, thinks he's going to be a cool vampire.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Like a lot of that's one thing I really liked, was a lot of it is like this strange contemporary version of, the story.
It's really well said.
The universal version of that, and what we've seen as that becomes the reality of what Dracula is, even more so than if you read the actual Bram Stoker.
Right.
Like, oftentimes the universal one is supplanted in lore, and you read it like, oh wow, they're pretty different.
Putting it all around an institution.
This is closer to that, and that's one thing I thought was cool. It was just again, what a weird lens of original Dracula story, along with crazy face swapping and all the stuff that's in this one.
That's a really excellent point. And they're a pair. Go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
His origin story is pretty off-brand.
Do you want to explain the origin to us?
Dracula.
Absolutely.
Although this is the first one of these movies that deals with Christianity in any real way. So the doctor character, who is my favorite character in this whole movie, by the way, but takes the professor to this graveyard, and he says there's all kinds of weird stories and legends in this region about devils, and here's one of them, and he shows him this like sort of cast iron coffin that is sticking halfway out of the ground.
Yeah.
And he tells the story about a ship that was shipwrecked, and a white man, presumably European, was washed ashore, and he was a Christian. And at this time in Japan, Christianity was banned, so they twisted his faith, which kind of drove him a little bit crazy, and then he wandering and eventually he's this strange figure who's like drinking his own blood just to get nutrition. And when he dies,
just such bullshit. You don't. That's not a thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't work, but it does feel very.
But it makes it an awesome lore.
Yeah, it feels very folkloric. And when he dies, he comes back as what we would call a vampire, and it starts attacking young girls in this village. So they eventually capture him and put him in this iron coffin. And of course, when they open up the coffin, there's no body or even bones. So that's how we know he got out and eventually became the principal of this school. But which is a very odd origin. They never actually use the name Dracula at any point in the story, but I mean, functionally the character is Dracula, and this is a very odd origin for Dracula.
It's cool because it sort of kind of mimics the ship from the book.
Yes.
But told through, hey, there's a foreign invader, because it was Spain and Portugal mostly that would have been Christians coming to there. And, when they got banned and crucified because the rulers were like, oh, you like crosses? Well, here you go. Have some of what you like. I mean, and there's some fascinating stuff with that too. When I was in Japan, they had, when it was banned, I got to see a shrine for what they called Maria Sama, which is, there would be like a statue that was a very Japanese version of, Virgin Mary statues that you would see like in a Catholic church. And they were kind of frowned upon, but people would go in kind of seclusion. The ones I saw were in kind of a little alcove, and you could sort of still worship without being technically Christian, but everybody kind of knew what it was. I'm sure there was persecution as well, but that kind of thing where that foreignness, and it being a Western vampire, like him being Dracula but not really Dracula, kind of adds to this story where, it's a foreigner that then became this, vampire that we see. And all those set pieces look great too. Like pieces of ship and the stuff sticking out of the ground, and the iron coffin. Man, the set design here is pretty awesome.
No, it's all gorgeous, and that actually is way more sophisticated than anything that ever showed up in Bray Studios in a Hammer film. Like, think about it, and I love Hammer to death. Okay, but think about like all the outdoor stuff in the Hammer films of that period. It all looks like either that one road outside Oakley Court, or it all looks like the inside of a stage, for sure. And this is gorgeous.
Well,
and it
it's
also
very
looks like
atmospheric with all the mountains and everything, and it does lend a very gothic. There's the great shot of them walking up towards the cemetery, which looks like some of the stuff in the Universal vampire or in Frankenstein film, but different at the same time, because it's a real place that they're going to, instead of one of the crazy sets that you would see. I love the again, it's the thing that I find fascinating about this whole series is that we're getting these images and ideas that we're so familiar with, but sort of reframed by this different culture.
It keeps snapping back and forth between being a kind of a rendition of, say, British horror, but there's always a reflection of the culture that it comes from. Like, to jump to the end, a little bit, when the two characters are and I want to get back to these two, in fact, but when the two vampire characters are dying, all of a sudden it becomes extraordinarily stagey, with the two villains who are kind of tragic, kind of their dead bodies holding hands, and the lovers embraced behind them in a sort of a victory pose. And it's like on a stage, and there's even operatic woodwinds going, like you're suddenly watching a Japanese play, with the full makeup and all of that stuff. And that's the moment when it becomes like the most Japanese it has been through this entire thing, because up until then, this literally could be a British movie, it could be a Dutch movie, it doesn't matter. It just so happens that all these actors are Japanese, but at that moment it really becomes opera. And it's that that's
Yeah, it's a lot like
really
the
cool.
Spanish. It's a lot like the Spanish versions of the
Yeah.
Dracula movies.
One thing I also forgot about. I love the touch of, like, there's like the white rose that has
Oh my gosh.
and then eventually turns red because
All the
it's
white stuff. The
imbued
white,
blood.
the scarf that we'll call him Dracula, the principal. The scarf that the principal wears is long and white. Tony, is it correct? Forgive me if this is just me being ignorant, but I understood that the color white is symbolic of death. That's correct, right?
Yeah, in Japan, yeah.
Okay, and so
Funerals
that
will
makes
have
sense.
more white than, yeah. I mean, you'll see a lot of people wearing black as, Western influences come in, but yes, definitely that's definitely part of it. Also, it's funny too, even though he was a priest or whatever, but you don't see him ever being driven off by crosses, now that I think about it.
Right.
Like, they could have gone with even more Western stuff, but that's not the story this is.
No, he's an amazing actor. I love how just like Christopher Lee, and this, you were kind of making reference to this, just like Christopher Lee in 1957, sorry, 58. He's suave until it's time to like get his Dracula being on, and then he's just like flying around, like just
Yeah, I
just
mean, I could
this.
see some people. I loved it. I could see people in a theater, especially, just kind of laughing at that. But man, he hams it up when he needs to ham it up, but it's not even hammy. He's just like, now I'm on the attack.
I'm right, and now I'm a feral cat
Glorious.
coming to get you. Yeah. Oh, he's
Just
fantastic. This actor's
flying
name is
around
Shin
with it.
Kashida. Shin Kashida was in a lot of movies, but he actually died in 1982 at the
Oh, wow.
age of 43,
Damn.
Really?
which is astonishing to me. So he was born in 39. So this is 74. So that means he's what? He's like 34, I guess. 34. And yeah, he died of esophageal cancer.
Oh, that's terrible.
That's
Yeah.
what
I
our
also
friend,
like
that's what our friend died of.
Sorry.
Man, that's terrible.
Tim,
But
Tim.
I do also like all the makeup. Like, as the women, of course, Dracula has his own pale, weird kind of pale
Yeah.
slash purplish. As people get vamped, they kind of like color code them with this, heavy makeup, full body makeup. Sometimes almost it looks like.
Oh yeah.
Of like this vampire pallor. I'm not quite sure when you turn a vampire what possesses you to just get more gossamer clothing. I'm not sure where you buy all that. I guess you rob like a lingerie store or
Well, that's
something.
the other
But it works because it goes back to the women in in the castle in Stoker's
I
Dracula.
love how there's this great moment when our girl, the main girl, is left with her roommate who has been bitten at least once by a vampire, and everybody's like, "You hang out here with the roommate. I'm gonna go wander around the grounds and look for vampires," and like. And then so very soon, her roommate sort of rises up and starts attacking her, and I love the way the vampire women are in this picture, because they are, as you mentioned, with the makeup, they're China doll like. with their their extremely white skin, but they also are more emotional than most like vampire zombie type characters we see in a lot of these movies. They smile, they laugh. If they're the boss, the Mrs. Principal, they laugh heartily, like Elizabeth Bathory in that Vampire Hunter D movie that we saw. That sort of
Yeah.
awesome stuff. I like that the bad guys are a pair. This pair, the principal and his wife, who have been apparently working together to steal faces.
Which again is the craziest effect because
Oh God, tell us about it.
you
Yes.
don't actually see, it's not gory. You don't see her cutting. You just kind of see like shadows and
Oh well,
images.
the first
And
blow
then,
is gory when she
yeah,
goes whack and cuts into the
right.
neck to
Well,
start
that's where.
carving.
Well, that and actually I have a question about that, but I'm going to come back to it in a second.
Okay.
So yeah, she cuts her neck. Well, I'll tell you what. Start with the question is going to be right now because she cuts her neck just like the guy that they go and visit has a big cut on his neck. So that
Yeah.
makes me wonder if they were going to try to take his face and then they didn't.
Yes.
Okay.
And
All
he
right.
got
Well,
away
yeah.
somehow.
Okay. Great. So anyway, so they take her face off, and so you don't see that. And then when she's putting it on, it looks like a porcelain mask. It looks just like a white mask, and then suddenly it's the other actress. So it's kind
Right.
of magical that way. But it was
That
really an interesting.
whole scene,
Yeah.
like I thought it was so, even though it's so bloody, I thought
Yeah.
it was so strangely kind of beautiful, like the way they would do like the splatter and like the choices of like the camera angles and everything. Like I just I don't know why. In even the business that Julia was just talking about, it was very like dreamlike to
Oh
me.
yes.
Like I think it was the end result of the sort of dreaminess that Vampire Doll had, but this
Yeah.
movie is so much more competent in a lot of ways that I think was able to take that sort of drive and put it in this stuff. There's also a lot of stuff peppered throughout the movie, like the white rose becoming red, or when they're watching the Rorschach tests on the
Oh yeah, that's so good.
slideshow, like the Rorschach blot turning all red. Like the way this movie uses blood as an idea is so cool.
Yeah. Oh no, it is. It's gorgeous. I want to mention that this is 1974. There's the movie 1960 movie called Eyes Without a Face that actually did feature that was either Italian or Spanish, I can't remember, but it featured a scientist who was like removing faces. He was trying to replace somebody's face, and it had some of those ideas. But I've never seen anything like this. Even that movie tries to take a science fiction-y kind of look at it. This is like a piece of folklore. This is a creature that steals your face and then puts it on and just kind of dabs at it and pushes on it like it's a mask until it just goes whoop, and there you go. You got a face now.
And even better, she decides she's gonna be like, "Oh, well, I'm this young girl. I'm gonna fool this guy by taking him to the lake, proposing to him." She's like, "Hey, we should get married. I mean, you're a professor. I'm in college.
That's how you
but
do.
he's since I like the detective work they do too. So he kind of knows by now, like
Yes.
right.
He's down on that they take faces. He immediately goes, "No, because you're the principal's wife."
Yeah. If he goes crazy, drowns the guy.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, and it's very quickly after this that we find our way back to the castle, and we have a final fight for the girl, and she is useless through this entire fight. If you want to
Yeah,
know something
that
that's
drives me crazy.
the most sexist part of the whole story, because the rest of it, whatever, you could choose whatever you're going to do with it, but it is absurd that she's so completely useless in this fight. because the fight has plenty of room for lots of people to get involved, because he
Yeah.
fights with the principal, I swear to God, for like 10 or 15 minutes. It's probably
Yes,
not
you could
that
try
long,
to hit
but-
him over the head with something. It wouldn't have
Absolutely. How many ridiculous films have we seen where at least that's the contribution of
Right. I mean,
the
I guess he does
actresses?
fight a little bit with the wife.
That's
Well,
true.
yes, when she
But-
shows up, then they're both engaged in the fight. But up until that
But he
point,
does
she's
have to
kind of
come
like,
rescue.
"Oh no, oh no."
Yeah, she
Yeah.
He
kind
does
of
have to come
pulls
rescue her from the
a
coffin.
cower in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But again, this movie's kind of sexist.
Little
Yes.
bit.
So
Right.
not to stir that all up again.
Yeah. No, for sure. So
I also like that, this is one of the first things I've seen where the dude tries to solve vampires by he throws an axe into the dudes.
yes,
Which might
that
have,
was cool.
yeah, it might have worked if he had either one hit his in the heart, or two, like somehow followed that up by, like, if he could have gone, this axe could have gone all the way through, so that the wood. I don't know if they have that rule of only wood.
Well,
Through the
doesn't
heart.
he kills him with the
Supposedly-
poker, so it's not.
Yeah,
They're
But the-
playing fast and
But
loose.
iron does work in some vampire.
That's true.
Yeah,
sins,
that's true.
so, like,
But doesn't he-
I loved the fact that, like, the two of them go at it, like, for a few minutes at the end of
Yes.
this movie. It was very dynamic.
It was. Oh yeah.
it's
well
great,
choreographed.
doesn't he? Like, it's been a few days. He grabs the axe out of his chest though and throws it back.
Oh
Right.
yeah. It sticks in the wall, and they look back, and the principal's there. He's like, "Yeah, I did that." And it's just so
That's so
great.
good. Like, oh man, I've axed this vampire. Oh crap!
Well, and when the
That's so good.
vampires are dying and sort of disintegrating, like the way they, go to each other so they can hold hands as they
Yes.
Oh man,
crumble into
that's-
skeletons.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that was truly gorgeous.
It's interesting too because once everything starts to really come together, and they've been in love. Like, this isn't the movie that we've seen so many times where it's like, oh, my lost love. I guess she may or may not have died in that accident. She may have caused the accident that he's saying that she died in.
I'm not clear on what happened with the accident.
Well,
at
either
all.
like it could have been that, hey, I vamped her when she died, or it could have been that, yeah, she was in a car, she vamped out, caused the accident, and it's just a good excuse to have her coffin there.
Yeah.
Either way, we don't get star-crossed lovers. We get, my wife stays. I walk around as the principal during the day. My wife stays in this coffin, and then when we're together, we're just wreaking havoc, ripping shit up together.
Which is pretty great.
Taking
How-
faces. Like, he's not after the women in a way that they're the object of desire. Like, there's this eternal love.
Yeah.
He and his wife are, a couple, and they're gonna just mess anybody gets in their way of stealing faces or doing whatever. They're together in this, and I think
that is pretty
that's
amazing.
pretty cool.
And it's very
Like that.
unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's because it's always, this is the part where it's the opposite of a certain kind of sexism that always appeared in all these other vampire movies, where it's always Dracula is here to initiate a mortal woman into the ways of vampirism as a sort of metaphor for the Casanova who's going to initiate a virginal Victorian into overt sexuality and eroticism. That whole metaphor is gone now and replaced with an eternal sort of god pair who are just kind of wreaking havoc like gods, as they move down through history, which is refreshingly different. And that's
The way that she steals faces, she becomes a kind of Bathory character.
Yes, that's a really good point.
So you've got even more mythology pulled together.
Y'all are saying is that the vampires have the healthiest relationship in this movie.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, healthy at the expense, healthy as a relationship, but unhealthy for anyone else. I mean, it's more like
they know one another's needs.
It's more of a serial killer. If both people are serial killers.
It's like a couple of butchers having a
relationship.
healthy relationship that's not so good for the stock, but is good for
Right.
for
I
them.
just wanted to be sure.
Yeah. I mean, technically, as a relationship, yes. As a relationship that's beneficial to the world, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, who knows the purpose that vampires serve in the
Yeah, I
cosmic
mean,
scheme of things.
there's plenty of people where you see, like, yes, that couple gets along, but maybe not so great for the rest of everyone else. Like,
But boy, they're horrible people.
yeah.
What a great point. Oh man. I also wanted to mention the way the Professor Shiraki, who's played by Toshio Kurosawa, his sort of wonderfully he's not very old, but he has this sort of craggy face with like multiple like angles to it, and he wears this gray coat all the time, and he really does look like a manga character to me. He looks like your hard-boiled detective from like a manga show.
I'll go, and I haven't done enough research. Maybe that's something we should do more.
Yeah.
I do wish I picture what the manga version of each of these movies would be.
Yeah.
I don't think I've never come across anything that references, hey, these were made into manga. But man, that would be I want that to have been a thing. I would love to see a manga version of these three movies.
He's still with us, by the way. This guy's 75 years old, and best known for a movie called Samurai Assassin, which I've never seen.
Oh, yeah, that movie's fun.
But he's acted. He's still acting. It's 2017. He's still got credits to his name this year. So good for him, man. But he does. He really looks like he should be like chasing gangsters in a manga. Okay, well, before we get to our final thoughts, is there anything that we've missed? Because I know we've jumped around a great deal, but I think we've hit on some really cool stuff that's super memorable, especially the dreaminess of the face scene. Julia, anybody got anything else, or do you want to just get final thoughts?
No, I think
I can even
covered everything.
All right. Okay, then let's do our final thoughts. And it was Tony, Drew, Julia, and then I got whatever. So Tony, I'm so thankful that you brought this to us. Final thoughts on Evil of Dracula.
I mean, thank Arrow for releasing this, right?
Yes.
that's the reason we have it. That's the reason why people can watch it on Prime.
Yeah, that's true.
Even if you don't buy the Blu-rays, which I highly recommend because there's cool extras. But you can watch this for whatever you're paying for Prime, or rent it for not too bad either. So, but yeah, I am glad that this came out and that I could share with everybody. Again, I'm always gonna steer towards J-horror, especially older stuff, because it has a cool vibe. I like this version of Dracula as seen through this director's eyes, and him finally going, you know what, I'm going to tell my own version of Dracula, and I'm going to make a contemporary. I'm also going to put all this crazy stuff that would be great in a manga. Man, now I'm going to obsess over that.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had Scrooge McDuck money. That would be one of my vanity projects, just to pay one of the top manga artists, like just go ape and adapt this. That would be amazing.
You can do a pretty solid adaptation of this that did not violate its copyright tomorrow. I'm pretty certain.
But it would just be awesome to pay a really good wage. That's important to me as an artist.
Yeah.
To pay a really top of their game manga artist right now, who probably doesn't have time because they're drawing their own manga anyway. Their rate, and just go, give me this, make it a bunch of volumes, do what you can, do to these movies what Gundam the Origin did to the Gundam franchise.
Yeah.
Here's I'm gonna throw cash at you. I wish I had Scrooge McDuck money to do that. That would be one of my all-time things. That, and I want to, on a side note, I've always dreamed about, if I had Scrooge McDuck money, taking the top writers in the country and have them do comics based on stuff that people think sucked. So like, I want people to go, damn it, man, I guess I like GoBots now.
Yeah.
Like, GoBots were terrible. but now that X writer is writing them, I guess GoBots are cool. Never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. Or what, you name it, shitty 80s franchise.
Yeah.
I would love to just pay. I'm talking about top dollar to top people and just turn things that you thought were awful into something really, really good. That would be amazing.
That's a wonderful idea. Yeah, I think about that all the time. That really it's the writer, not the franchise, because sometimes somebody can come on to a show or a comic or whatever, and nobody cares about this particular series.
In
but
my
they do something cool.
In my opinion, and again, I'll wrap this up for final thoughts. But in my opinion, the best stuff happened like at Marvel once Hasbro or was it Hasbro or Mattel? Anyway, once the licensor forgot about G.I. Joe and Micronauts and you name it, and they still kept going because they had the licenses. Those are some of the best stories.
Absolutely.
Like they didn't have to go. And by the way, there's this new toy they're releasing next week. Let's put that in the book. Once the licensors never just quit giving a crap, and the storytellers could just tell stories. Those Micronauts issues were great. Those ROM issues, fantastic. Once they didn't have to go, I'll vaporize you with my blah blah weapon. I've neutralized them with this toy. Or G.I. Joe had to go, by the way, that's a rattler. Look at that.
Or here's our new character. Sea Cook. Yes, exactly.
Those were. So I would love to do that, but I would love to see a manga version of this. And I really enjoyed this take on Hammer and Bram Stoker's Dracula as seen through with some great pieces, man. Like the fights are good, the scenes look great. I'm glad we finally got this in a format that everybody could see, and it's no longer relegated to the land of bootlegs and find it in Vulcan or I Love Video.
Perfect. All right, Mr. Drew, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't really know that I have too much to add. I really enjoyed discussing these three films. I enjoyed this one probably the most. Well, I would say not even probably, definitely the most out of the lot, because I think it took what was interesting about the previous two movies and backed them up with a very solid classic vampire story. And I just enjoyed discussing these. I don't know if I can match Tony's level of enthusiasm, but I definitely dig this movie quite a bit.
Awesome. Julia, what are your thoughts?
No, I can't. I also cannot match Tony's level of enthusiasm. But I do think that there's some neat stuff about it. I agree that it has some beautiful sets and practical sets as well as the studio. I think the acting is pretty good. The story's pretty good. It's not. I don't know that it's really deep exploration of characters or themes, but I think it was fun, and I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to our panel on on whether what I don't even know what to call it exactly. It's like something about the Me Too movement and how that affects what we see in media. I don't know. I have to think about that one. But anyway, it'll be fun.
It's sort of how you enjoy problematic media, I guess. You can define it yourself. I can't wait to figure out what you figure out. Thank you. For my part, love this. I think this would be so great in like a double feature with Count Yorga. Because they're both these contemporary sort of old school vampires, and really neat. I loved what Drew said about the dreaminess of the putting on the face scene. I think that's fabulous. Really neat stuff. I was really thrilled to watch this. So that's the end of our discussion of the Bloodthirsty trilogy. And I'm really so glad that we did. I think this one has really been a treat to watch as I don't know, as a fan of film, watching this very strange mixture of Western and Japanese influence. So it's been a fantastic experience. Let's get our endorsements, because I know we will be gone for at least another week. after this, so I'm dying to know what you guys would like to tell people to watch or to read or what you've been up to. So Tony, let's start with you. What's up?
Off and on, I'm still getting into, and I noticed a couple friends getting into this too. And like, hey, Amazon Prime has weirdo crap going on. Like I said, I discovered they had a lot more Japanese 60s and 70s. I'd been watching some stuff on Criterion Collection, the Criterion app. I subscribe to that. Branded to Kill and a bunch of other stuff. And then I've been watching these like I said, Stray Cat Blues, Delinquent Girl Boss, which is quite the mouthful, but describes exactly that. It has just, we see a lot of like, hey, it's tough women being tough as a new kind of thing. But Japan had that during the 70s. We just didn't see a lot of it because it's mixed. It's this mixed bag of like stuff that's violent and problematic with just like women biker gangs fighting each other and taking charge and stuff like that. Also, I noticed Vulcan Video looks like they have a fundraiser going, which I need to listen to because Vulcan and I Love Video definitely were what made me love Austin and want to stay here in a big way. Basically, if you are lucky enough to live here, warts and all, if Vulcan or I Love Video doesn't have it in physical media, it probably doesn't exist in physical media.
Right. Absolutely.
Like we can find it out, a lot of it digitally through various means, but that was what I found. So I'll have to post that link to help them out. I'm pretty sure it was Vulcan. But yeah, I also, self-serve, we were just in the studio to record a new Deserts of Mars EP, which is we have to work around our engineer producer's schedule. He's in a band called Duel. His name is Jeff Henson. I highly recommend checking out Duel. They have a cool horror themed kind of look to their t-shirts, all of their merch and everything, and their kind of approach to stuff. But they're going on tour, so it'll be a bit before this Deserts of Mars EP is out. But I'm super stoked to be back to making music and playing with that. So more later on that. But in general, just go out and watch some weirdo movies. Take a chance on some things, and screw up your Amazon list for your significant other if they're not in the same things as you are.
What a great piece of advice that is.
I mean, Rain, must love me because when it comes to the Amazon list of just do you have to have 300 kung fu movies and another 100 weird Hong Kong and Japanese like violent action movie films or weird 60s and 70s stuff. It's all the recommendations it's hard for her to find anything she wants to watch. So if your significant other is into this, you're good. If not, hopefully they won't mind you too much messing up the queue or since you watch this, you'll love this, which may or may not be the thing that they love.
I love it.
I'm sure Julius has encountered this.
Oh my God.
For sure.
Yeah, please. I don't know, Julia, do you ever go looking for stuff on Amazon Prime and find yourself just going, what the
well, it's not as much Amazon Prime as it is like the Netflix or the whatever, like you're gonna watch something. Well, the Amazon, yeah, for sure, because we're logged in on Amazon Prime on the TV, so yeah, Amazon Prime will show up. But it's not. I don't go because I know exactly what you're into. So it's not
at this point, it's usually eye roll more than what the, but it's similar. It's the same vein, yeah.
Okay, Drew, what do you have to endorse for us?
First off, am I the only person who has a spouse who finds my eccentric tastes endearing instead of off-putting? I literally have never had. I literally have never had this discussion with Jamie about. I mean, I basically sat around and watched weird horror films all day, and I never once got an eye roll. At least I don't think so. Maybe she did when I turned my head. I don't know.
You guys have been married a lot less times than we have.
Well,
give it a few years.
I don't know about that. You guys do have more similar tastes, I think, than perhaps Rain and I do. But the things we do like together are pretty strong. And I don't think, again, like I don't think Rain is like, ugh, that so much as she is like, hey, that's not my bag, but you know, do what thou wilt.
I get the impression I'm a constant source of comedy around the house.
Mhm.
You know, with
I'm with you there.
You know,
Jason, are you a sitcom dad? Inquiring minds want to
Totally.
know.
I actually am.
We actually often talk about our lives as being a sitcom. It feels
Yeah.
very sitcom-y.
Yeah.
So endorsements. I want you to all watch the Doom Patrol show, so it will get a second season. It is almost over. You have to get the DC Universe app. I know that's a daunting thing. It's like another streaming service. It's pretty cheap. The comics alone, if you're a comic book fan, will make it worth it. But you now immediately should stop watching what you're watching. Stop watching all the other superhero shows that you're watching. They're a waste of time. Watch Doom Patrol instead. Trust me. I need there to be a second season of this. I was devastated the Tick got canceled. So now I'm convinced.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, I am now convinced that everything I like gets canceled. So I want to. This is where I'm drawing my line in the sand. I'm actually even going to double on this, even though I have the app. I'm going to buy this on Blu-ray when it's offered because I love the Doom Patrol that much.
My daughter totally loves it. Yeah, the DC app, we've got it. I dropped Shudder for DC, which I know seems like a crazy choice, but you know, she just really wanted that app.
I'm just bummed because the app doesn't work on my old iPad.
What? Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's how all of that works. I can't.
I have not checked to see if it'll run on my iPad. I really have not checked that. That's interesting.
Fine on my it works fine on my laptop and fine on my phone.
No. That's completely cool.
So much.
It's a bummer. It works great on my watching movies is great on my Roku. I wanted to take my iPad on vacation and read Swamp Thing, and and that is sad. But I know why.
Swamp Thing shows comes out next week.
Oh yeah.
What comes out next week?
The Swamp Thing TV show.
Oh yeah. It
looks pretty good. So I don't know. Initially, I up after spending your money on that, you spend what money you have left by going to the Halloween Man TeePublic store because I've upped my merch game and now there are Halloween Lucy t-shirts, TeePublic and Man, and finally be able to spend my money on Man t-shirt.
Nice.
I know you've wanted all these years. So a lot of because I have like nearly 20 years worth of comic book art. I have a lot of great images that have gone up there by some name artists too. So take a perusal when you have a chance, and I'll post the link on the Facebook tomorrow.
Oh, please do that.
You can all check it out. Yeah.
That's a great idea. Ms. Julia, what do you have to endorse for us?
I'm trying to think if I have anything new.
I mean, other than Fosse Verdon, which I
yeah,
know.
Yeah, we've been really enjoying Fosse Verdon. It's a mini series, I guess, or a short one season because it's only going to be this.
It's a mini series. It's an 8-episode mini series.
Yeah, about Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon. That's been really interesting. It's very artistic and I like it a lot. I like Michelle Williams a lot. I think she's really done a great job of getting completely lost in this role. And Sam Rockwell does an awesome job. That's a good one because that's one of the only things I've been watching that's new. I've been watching Killing Eve, which I've endorsed before. It's just wickedly delicious. I really haven't seen any movies this week. I didn't read anything new really. So that's probably the best. Yeah, there's not a lot. I've been pretty busy.
Excellent. And for my part, I have 2 endorsements. One, I was just watching, and I think this showed up on Amazon Prime. Elvira did a whole slew of Full Moon Entertainment movies.
Oh my gosh,
like Doll Man. So I started watching Doll Man as hosted by Elvira, and I got two thoughts about this. One, this new series from Elvira came out in 2014. That's what is that? 5 years ago. And here's the crazy thing: Elvira had to have been in her 60s at that point, early 60s. She looked the same. I don't know if it is just the abundance of white pancake makeup that is doing what, but she looks really solid. I was so amazed at Cassandra Peterson. Whatever her secret is, she needs to share it with the world, because apparently Elvira is genuinely immortal. And it's funny. It's really funny. It's actually a better written show than the original Elvira from the 80s. So that's cool. Second, I cannot endorse enough. You must pre-order the Castle of Horror Anthology, because we have so many great writers in it, including Kevin J. Anderson, including Laura Parker, who played Angelique on Dark Shadows, and just David Bowles is in there, who you've heard many, many times on this show. Some new voices that people haven't heard from again before. I've got a story in there. Joy's got a story in there. So that comes out July 1st. So now is the time to pre-order. And just wanted to remind you guys.
When does the second Young Captain Nemo book come out?
The second Young Captain Nemo book comes out in March of 2020. So that's still a year away.
But you've got it turned in, so we're on the way.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm celebrating. We're about to go on vacation. I'm not going to think about a darn thing. But I did get Young Captain Nemo 2 turned in, and everybody's happy with it. So it's over the way novels work. I don't want to bore people with this stuff, but the way it works, you turn it in. Typically, I turn in the book at Labor Day. Then I usually get a whole bunch of edits that are due around January, and then I get a whole bunch more edits that are due around March, and then you usually get it signed off sometime around April or May, and it is finally signed off, and that's always an exhausting process. And so now we start all over again with a new one that'll be due in Labor Day. But I don't know yet what happens in that book, so so I don't really have anything to say about it. So, all right. Gosh, it's been so wonderful talking about the Bloodthirsty Trilogy. I think this has been, one of my favorite series, and really, I was trying to think, like, what are my favorite films, and it's always these ones that you don't hear about all the time, and I'm just really happy that we talked about this. So everybody have a fantastic week, actually, too, because I know that we will be out next Sunday. But I hope to talk to everybody, and we'll be back really soon. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Night.